I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the orange flags stuck in the dirt along the canyon rim, bright against the red rock, moving in the wind like warning signs. At first I thought maybe the county had come out for a survey. Then I saw the white stakes, and then the printed lot numbers. Lot 1, Lot 2, Lot 3, all the way down the ridge. By the time I reached Lot 14, I could hear voices echoing off the canyon walls as a group of strangers stood near the overlook where my uncle used to take me when I was a kid, complete with golf carts parked on the old cattle trail, a folding table with bottled water, a drone buzzing overhead, and a banner tied between two cedar posts reading, Silver Mesa Phase 3, Canyon Estates, only 14 lots available. For a few seconds I just stared at it, because that canyon was mine. Not emotionally mine, not my favorite view mine, not I grew up around here mine, but legally mine, since I had inherited all 4,200 acres of Red Mesa Canyon from my uncle 6 months earlier. With the deed recorded, the probate file closed, the property taxes in my name, and the boundary survey fresh enough that the blue paint was still on the monuments. And yet there was Karen Whitmore, president of Silver Mesa Estates HOA, standing in the middle of my canyon with a sales packet in her hand, telling potential buyers where their future pools and patios would go, right before a man in sunglasses turned to me and asked, "Are you with the grading crew?" I said, "No, I own this land." The group went quiet. Karen turned slowly, like I had interrupted a wedding, with a smile that did not move, and she said, "Oh, this again." That was when I noticed the reservation forms on the table, the QR code for deposits, the fake map with 14 lots drawn across my canyon, and the glossy brochure calling my family's land the final luxury expansion of Silver Mesa. I walked closer and said, "You're selling land you don't own." Karen laughed in front of the buyers and said, "Red Mesa has always been part of the planned community footprint, and your uncle held a legacy ranch parcel while final title integration was being prepared," which was the most expensive-sounding lie I had ever heard in my life. A woman holding a packet looked at Karen and asked, "Wait, is there a title issue?" Karen kept smiling and said, "No, he's confused about the transition process," prompting me to pull out my phone and start recording, capturing the banner, the lot stakes, the buyer forms, the deposit QR code, Karen's sales packet, the drone operator, the golf carts, the bulldozer marks cut into the old cattle trail, and the sign that said $50,000 priority deposit. Karen's smile finally disappeared, and she said, "You are interfering with development sales. Our board will pursue damages." To which I replied, "Call your lawyer." And she said, "I already have." So I said, "Good. I'm calling the county." By the end of that week, the county recorder confirmed there had never been a transfer. The planning office confirmed there was no approved subdivision. And the title report confirmed Silver Mesa had no ownership, no option, no easement, no development rights, and no authority to sell a single square foot of my canyon. By the end of the month, every one of those 14 lot reservations was canceled. Buyers got their deposits back. The HOA was under investigation. Karen was removed from office. And the same banner that said only 14 lots available came down under a county notice that said no approved subdivision, private property, sales under review. Red Mesa Canyon was never the kind of place people understood from a brochure, because you could not capture it in one drone shot, as the canyon changed every hour. In the morning, the east wall turned gold before the creek bed saw any sun. At noon, the whole place looked harsh and empty unless you knew where to find shade, and by evening, the red rock deepened into purple, while the wind moved through the cottonwoods at the bottom, like water even when the creek was dry. My Uncle Ray owned it for 41 years. He was not rich in the way developers understand rich, driving an old pickup with cracked vinyl seats, wearing the same straw hat until sweat had permanently shaped the brim, keeping cash in coffee cans, tools in places only he understood, and land records in a fireproof cabinet cleaner than his kitchen. He loved that canyon, not because it could be developed, but because it had not been, my grandfather had run cattle there before the county paved the main road. My father learned to ride through the lower draw, and I learned to shoot tin cans near the windmill and got my first rattlesnake lecture before I was old enough to understand how serious my uncle was. There was a one-room cabin near the old spring, a collapsed corral, 2 windmills, a grazing lease that expired before I was born, and survey monuments my uncle checked after every major storm, like he was visiting relatives. He had been approached by developers more times than I can count. The first wanted a golf course, the second wanted luxury cabins, the third wanted a wellness retreat, and the fourth wanted canyon living, with curated desert authenticity, which made my uncle laugh so hard he had to sit down. Then came the developer who built Silver Mesa Estates. They bought land along the northern rim and created a gated community with stucco houses, stone entrances, desert landscaping, and views they could only sell because my uncle had refused to sell the canyon below them. Their brochures showed sunsets over his land, and their model homes were named after features inside his canyon: Red Rock Vista, Cottonwood Bend, Mesa Overlook. But they never owned Red Mesa Canyon. They owned the rim lots, their streets, their clubhouse, decorative entry walls, and walking path inside their recorded plat, but they did not own the canyon. The original developer tried to buy it, and my uncle refused. Then they asked for trail access, and he refused. Then they asked for an option agreement in case he ever sold, and he refused that too. Until finally they tried what sounded harmless: permission to refer to the canyon as a natural backdrop in marketing. My uncle told them they could photograph the view from their own land, but any wording implying ownership, access, expansion rights, trail rights, or future development would get them sued, and he kept that letter, along with everything else. When he got sick, he called me to the cabin one afternoon and made me sit at the old table while he opened the fireproof box, showing me the deed, the surveys, the mineral reservation, the grazing records, the no-access letters, the developer correspondence, the county parcel maps, and the legal description, before saying, "Developers don't stop wanting land just because they were told no once." I thought he was being dramatic, but he was not, because after he died, probate took months. I inherited the canyon, recorded the deed, paid the taxes, hired a surveyor, and changed the gate locks, planning not to build anything or sell anything, but instead to repair the cabin, restore the trail washed out by summer storms, and maybe put a conservation plan together one day. To me, the canyon was grief and memory and responsibility, but to Karen Whitmore, it was inventory. Karen became president of Silver Mesa Estates 2 years after the original developer left, carrying the kind of confidence that comes from reading half a document and assuming the missing half agrees with her. Loving phrases like community vision, legacy integration, expansion readiness, and value protection. She told residents Silver Mesa had been promised a Phase 3, that the canyon was a future growth parcel, and that the HOA needed to move quickly before outside buyers interfered with community continuity. None of which meant anything legally, but it sounded official enough for people who wanted to believe their view could become their investment. And if you have ever seen an HOA point at land beside them and call it future expansion, shared open space, community backdrop, or planned amenity without showing a recorded deed, stay with this story. Like, comment, and subscribe when you get a moment. Because this is exactly why county records matter more than brochures. Since a glossy sales packet can make stolen land look legitimate for about 5 minutes, while a title report can burn the whole thing down in 1 page. The first warning did not come from Karen, but from a real estate agent I knew from town who sent me a screenshot with one line asking, "Is this yours, or did you sell?" The listing showed my canyon under a sunset filter so heavy, the red rock looked fake, titled Silver Mesa Phase 3, Canyon Estates, 14 exclusive home sites, private canyon living, reservation deposits now open, featuring a map with 14 lots drawn across the upper bench, and down toward the old cattle trail. Lot 7 sat near the spring. Lot 11 covered the place where my uncle had buried 2 horses, and Lot 14 ran across the route my grandfather used to move cattle between pastures. The listing said deposits started at $25,000, with premium overlook lots requiring $50,000, and at first I thought it was an online scam using old photos, until I clicked the link and saw it went to a page hosted by Silver Mesa's management company. There was Karen's name at the bottom, a scheduled canyon tour, a QR code to join the priority buyer list, and a statement saying final lot assignments would be made after title consolidation and county processing. Phrases designed to sound like paperwork was already moving when nothing existed. I emailed the HOA manager, Karen, and their listed attorney, stating, Red Mesa Canyon is private property owned by me under recorded deed. Silver Mesa Estates has no ownership interest, access right, option contract, development right, or sales authority. Remove all listings immediately, cancel all tours, preserve communications and deposit records, and any entry onto the property will be treated as trespass. Karen replied the next morning, writing, The canyon parcel has long been understood as part of Silver Mesa's planned expansion footprint, and your position is noted, but the board will continue community planning efforts while title matters are finalized. I read it 3 times, not because it was confusing, but because it was careful. She did not say they owned it. She did not say they had an option. She did not say they had a contract, but instead used words like understood, planned, and finalized, which are the exact words people use when they want momentum to replace ownership. 2 days later, I got a second screenshot showing the tour announcement for Canyon Estates Preview Walk on Saturday at 10 a.m., restricted to buyers with reservation deposits only, and that was when I drove out. The front gate to the canyon had fresh tire marks. The chain was hanging wrong, my no trespassing sign had been turned sideways, and down the trail I found survey tape that did not belong to my surveyor. Orange flags marking corners, white stakes with handwritten lot numbers, and a small bulldozer that had cut a rough path around a washout. They had not just advertised my land, they had entered it, marked it, and started turning it into a subdivision before owning 1 inch. On Saturday, I arrived before 10 a.m. and parked behind a rise where I could see the upper overlook, wanting to know exactly what they were saying before I walked in. First came 2 golf carts, then a side-by-side utility vehicle, and then 3 SUVs, from which buyers stepped out wearing sunglasses, hiking shoes, and the hopeful expression of people imagining future patios. A drone lifted from the turnout. A young man in a polo set up a folding table with brochures, deposit forms, and bottled water, and then Karen arrived wearing a white blazer, which was absurd in canyon dust, carrying a leather folder like she was closing a commercial real estate deal. I started recording before I walked down, capturing Karen telling the group Silver Mesa had always envisioned 14 estate lots in the canyon, saying Phase 3 would preserve natural character while adding exclusive home sites, pointing toward the spring and calling it a future community feature, telling buyers Lot 3 had the best sunrise exposure, and telling another couple that early deposits would protect pricing before public release. A man asked if the county had approved the lots. Karen said approvals were in process. A woman asked if title was clear. Karen smiled and said, Silver Mesa is handling that. And then someone noticed me. The man in sunglasses asked if I was with grading. I said I owned the land, and the air changed instantly as buyers looked at Karen. Karen looked at me like I was an inconvenience rather than an owner. She told the group there was a legacy ranch holder dispute being resolved, and I said, There is no dispute. There is a deed, holding up my phone and keeping recording. Karen's voice hardened as she said, You are disrupting a private sales event. I replied, On my private property, she retorted. You will be liable for interfering with 14 pending reservations. And I answered, You sold 14 lots that do not exist, which was the exact moment the buyers stopped looking annoyed and started looking scared. I did not pull out stakes that day, though I wanted to. wanting to rip every orange flag out of the dirt, throw the banner into the truck bed, and tell every person there to leave before I forgot my manners. But my uncle's voice was in my head. Paper first, anger later. So I recorded, capturing the banner, the lot stakes, the drone, the golf carts, the QR deposit sign, the buyer packets, the fake development map, the bulldozer scar on the cattle trail, Karen telling buyers the land was part of Silver Mesa's planned expansion, and a buyer asking whether title was clear, while Karen said Silver Mesa was handling it. I photographed license plates, the faces of the people running the tour, the lot numbers and their locations against landmarks, and my old boundary signs, including the one that had been twisted sideways. Then I asked the buyers to take pictures of their packets. Some refused, some were too confused to answer, but one couple, Mark and Emily, pulled me aside because they had put down a $50,000 reservation deposit on Lot 6, thinking Silver Mesa owned the land, and showed me their receipt on a phone, with the payment going to an account labeled Silver Mesa Expansion Reserve. I asked them to email it to me. Karen shouted that I was soliciting buyers. I said, "No, I'm finding victims." And that landed harder than I expected, as several buyers started asking Karen direct answers. Did Silver Mesa own the canyon? Was there a recorded transfer? Were deposits refundable? Were the lots legally created? Or was the county approval complete? While Karen kept saying the process was moving, which was not an answer at all. I left before the situation became a shouting match, and on the drive back, I called my title attorney, Daniel Price, who had handled the probate transfer and knew the property records. And when I told him Karen was selling 14 lots in Red Mesa Canyon, he went silent before saying, "Do not touch the stakes yet. We need every agency in the right order." By noon, I had sent him videos, photos, the listing link, the deposit page, Karen's email, buyer receipt, and the map. And by 2 p.m., Daniel had pulled the recorded deed, probate order, assessor map, latest survey, title report, and county grantor-grantee index, revealing no sale, no option, no memorandum of contract, no easement, no access agreement, no subdivision plat, no road dedication, no water rights transfer, and no development application, no water rights transfer, and no development. By 3 p.m., I called the county recorder, who confirmed there had been no deed transfer, no recorded option, and no subdivision map related to the parcel. By 4 p.m., Daniel contacted the Planning and Zoning Office, who confirmed no approved tract map, no legal lot creation, no road extension permit, no grading permit, no environmental review, and no approval to offer lots. And by 5 p.m., I called the sheriff's office and filed a trespass report. The deputy who took the report asked if there had been threats. I said the HOA president threatened to sue me for interfering with sales of my own land. He paused, and then said, "Bring the documents." I did, and the next week became a blur of records as my surveyor walked the canyon and confirmed the lot stakes were not near a boundary mistake, but deep inside my property, with Lot 9 nearly half a mile from the Silver Mesa line, and Lot 14 sitting so far into the canyon that no honest person could call it a misunderstanding. Daniel sent a formal demand letter demanding the cessation of all marketing and sales, cancellation of all tours, removal of listings, preservation of all documents, identification of all buyers, preservation of deposit records, refund of deposits, removal of signs and stakes, restoration of disturbed land, cessation of trespass, preservation of board communications, and an order not to destroy maps, emails, payment records, promotional videos, or internal discussions concerning Red Mesa Canyon, Phase 3, title consolidation, owner resistance, or planned expansion. That last list came from Karen's own words because her language gave away the game. She never said ownership, but instead said process, expectation, footprint, and title matters. And when Daniel demanded the documents proving Silver Mesa's authority to sell lots, the HOA sent nothing, Not one recorded instrument, not one signed contract, not one county approval, only a claim that the canyon had always been anticipated as part of the community's long-term development plan, to which Daniel wrote back, "Anticipated is not owned." The strongest evidence came from an angry buyer named Dennis, who had put down $25,000 on Lot 12 and was not sympathetic at first, accusing me of trying to sabotage a development because I did not want neighbors, to which I told him I did not want neighbors on land I owned. 2 days later, he forwarded me the buyer packet, and inside was a document titled Silver Mesa Phase 3 Reservation Agreement, which accepted money to reserve future lot preference pending final title and subdivision processing, stating that deposits were partially refundable only at the discretion of the board after administrative costs, and noting that buyers acknowledged final plat approval was expected but not guaranteed. But the sales brochure used much stronger language. Only 14 lots available, private canyon home sites, priority ownership reservations, and secure your place in Silver Mesa's final phase. Proving Karen had told buyers one thing in person, the brochure suggested another, and the legal fine print tried to protect the HOA from the fact that they had no land to sell. Then Dennis sent the board meeting excerpt that had been attached by mistake to a buyer update email, featuring minutes that included a discussion of Phase 3 strategy, where one line stood out: proceeding with reservations may strengthen community expectation before final title objections are resolved. I read that sentence so many times it stopped looking real. Final title objections meant they knew there were title problems. Or worse, they knew there was no title at all. Another line said, "Owner resistance is expected. Marketing should emphasize planned expansion rights and continuity with the original community vision." And owner resistance was me, meaning they had not mistaken my canyon for theirs, but had instead expected resistance from the owner and decided selling reservations might create pressure, which is when the case stopped being just trespass and became deception. Daniel immediately sent the minutes to the county planning office, the county recorder, the sheriff's office, and the state real estate licensing board, because one of the people at the tour held himself out as a sales consultant associated with a brokerage, prompting the county planning director to issue the first public notice stating, "No approved subdivision, no legal lot creation, no county authorization to market or sell lots within Red Mesa Canyon." The recorder's office provided certified copies showing no ownership interest in Silver Mesa's name. The assessor confirmed the entire canyon remained under my parcel number. The title company issued a letter stating Silver Mesa Estates HOA had no recorded ownership, no recorded purchase agreement, no option, no easement, no right of first refusal, and no insurable interest in the canyon. The sheriff's office updated the trespass report to include organized entry, marking of private land, and continued access after written notice, and the real estate licensing board opened a complaint regarding advertising and collecting reservation deposits tied to land without clear authority. Karen's public response was predictable, as she called it a paperwork delay, said the HOA was protecting the long-term vision of Silver Mesa, claimed opponents were trying to confuse buyers, and stated every major development faces title processing steps, to which Daniel responded by releasing one sentence to the HOA attorney: "There is no title processing step that converts my client's land into your client's inventory." That sentence spread through Silver Mesa faster than any official notice. As buyers began demanding refunds, residents began asking whether HOA funds had been used for surveys, marketing, drone footage, legal review, and sales materials for land the HOA did not own. And though the board tried to hold everything together, once the county placed a stop notice at the canyon entrance reading, "No approved subdivision, private property, sales under review," that sign did what my uncle always said records would do, by removing opinion from the conversation. The on-site inspection happened on a windy Tuesday morning, when the county planning director came with a staff planner, The sheriff sent 2 deputies. My surveyor came with the recorded plat, GPS equipment, and the fresh boundary survey, and Daniel came with a binder thick enough to make Karen's sales packet look like a restaurant menu. Karen arrived late with the HOA attorney, 2 board members, and a public relations consultant, who should have stayed home, along with a few buyers including Mark, Emily, Dennis, and another couple, holding a folder with their deposit receipts sticking out the top, looking embarrassed and furious in equal measure. The first thing the surveyor did was set up at the true boundary, where the Silver Mesa line sat far above the canyon bench, nowhere near the fake lot stakes, walking the officials along the markers, overlaying the HOA's Phase 3 map with the recorded survey, and proving lot after lot fell completely inside my parcel. Not partly, not debatably, but completely. The planning director looked at Karen's map and asked, "Who prepared this?" Karen said it was a conceptual planning document. Daniel said, "It was used to collect deposits," and Dennis raised his receipt saying, "It was used to collect mine." When the planning director asked for the approved subdivision application, the HOA attorney admitted none had been approved, tried to say preliminary discussions had occurred, and when the planner asked for application numbers, there were none. No road permit, no grading permit, no water plan, no environmental review, and no legal ownership. The planning director finally said the sentence that ended the fantasy in front of everyone. No approved plat means no lots. No ownership means no sales. Karen crossed her arms and said the HOA had relied on original development expectations. The planning director said, "Expectations are not county approvals," Dennis added, "or deeds," and the deputies documented the signs, stakes, drone operators' markings, gate damage, and bulldozer track, asking who authorized entry after my written warning, while Karen deferred to counsel, and the board treasurer looked like he wanted to vanish into the dirt. Then one deputy walked to the banner and asked if the county wanted it left for evidence or removed. The planning director photographed it and told them to take it down, and as I watched the banner fall, reading Silver Mesa Phase 3, Canyon Estates, only 14 lots available, hit the dust and fold over itself. That should have been the end, but the real explosion happened at the HOA meeting 2 nights later. Silver Mesa's clubhouse was packed as residents stood along the walls, angry because they had heard the county was investigating. Buyers were angry because refunds were delayed. Board members were angry because Karen had become radioactive. And Karen was angry because for the first time people were asking her questions she could not talk over, until Daniel was allowed to present the records. He showed my inherited deed, the probate order, the assessor map, the survey overlay, the title company letter, the county recorder certification, the no subdivision notice, the planning director's stop notice, the sheriff's trespass report, the HOA listing, the deposit QR code, the buyer receipts, the Phase 3 map, and the board minutes about final title objections, pausing on the line about community expectation. Proceeding with reservations may strengthen community expectation before final title objections are resolved. A woman in the front row said, "That sounds like pressure." Daniel replied, "That is exactly what it appears to be." A buyer stood up and asked, "So you took my $50,000 for a lot that legally does not exist?" The HOA attorney tried to answer. The buyer said, "I'm asking her." Karen said the deposits were reservations, not final purchases. The buyer answered, "Reserved from who? The man sitting right there owns it." And another resident asked, how much HOA money had been spent on Phase 3, to which the treasurer said, those figures were being compiled, which was never a comforting sentence. When someone asked whether insurance would cover lawsuits from buyers, the attorney said, coverage depended on findings regarding knowledge and intent, making the room worse, because everyone understood what knowledge and intent meant after seeing the board minutes. And though Karen tried to speak about vision, no one wanted vision. They wanted refunds, numbers, and to know why their HOA had advertised 14 lots in a canyon it did not own. By the end of the meeting, The board voted to cancel all reservations, issue refunds, remove all listings, suspend Karen from any development authority, preserve all documents, cooperate with county agencies, and begin settlement negotiations with me for trespass, restoration, legal fees, and damage to the property. And even though Karen voted no, and the room laughed, not because it was funny, but because even after county records canceled every sale, she still thought refusal sounded like leadership. It was over. The refunds took 3 weeks, and the lawsuits took longer, as some buyers accepted refunds and walked away, while others demanded damages, interest, travel costs, inspection fees, and attorney fees, with one buyer having already started talking to a builder, another having sold investment assets to place the deposit, and Mark and Emily telling me they had imagined retiring on Lot 6 before feeling stupid for believing a brochure. I told them the same thing I told every buyer who apologized for standing in my canyon. You were lied to too. That mattered because the buyers were not my enemy, since the HOA had turned them into trespassers with glossy paper. Silver Mesa paid to remove the stakes, signs, table, and temporary trail markers, paid for my surveyor to confirm removal, paid for restoration of the bulldozer scar on the old cattle trail, paid for the damaged gate chain, new cameras, attorney fees, and a settlement for unauthorized entry and marketing of my property, while the county issued penalties tied to unpermitted land disturbance, illegal lot offering, and signage. The real estate licensing complaint cost the sales consultant his contract and put his license under review, and the HOA's insurance carrier reserved rights, which is a polite way of saying they might not pay for intentional stupidity. Karen resigned before the recall vote, with her statement saying she had pursued an ambitious expansion vision based on historical community expectations, though nobody applauded, and the board replaced her with a retired engineer named Paul, who looked at maps before using words like ours, making his first act sending a correction to every resident, stating that Red Mesa Canyon is private property, not part of Silver Mesa Estates, and that no resident, guest, board member, vendor, contractor, agent, or buyer has permission to enter, market, survey, stake, tour, reserve, or claim any portion of the canyon, because there is no Phase 3. I printed that email and took it to my uncle's cabin, sitting at the old table where he had shown me the records before he died, with his fireproof box still there, along with his pencil cup, cracked coffee mug, and the old county map he had marked by hand, letting myself feel tired for the first time since the tour. Not victorious, just tired. People think winning a property fight feels clean, but it does not. Feeling instead like finding boot prints in your living room, proving the boots were never invited, and then spending months sweeping dust out of corners, though the land was still mine, and I had to make it feel private again. I walked the canyon after the stakes came out, noting Lot 1 near the rim where the wind hits hardest, Lot 4 cutting across a deer trail, Lot 7 too close to the spring, Lot 11 still making me angry because of the horses buried there, and Lot 14 so deep into the canyon that I stopped and laughed once, not because it was funny, but because Karen's confidence had been almost impressive, since she did not just lean over the fence, but walked half a mile in, planted a flag, and called it inventory. I repaired the cattle trail, replaced the gate, added cameras, reposted the boundary, and then put up 2 new signs reading, Private Canyon, No HOA, Phase 3, County Verified, alongside a smaller second sign reading, A View is Not a Deed, which was one for my uncle. Silver Mesa residents still look at the canyon from their patios, which is fine, because looking is not owning. Enjoying a sunset is not development rights. A brochure photo is not a recorded transfer. A board vote is not a deed. And anticipated expansion is just another way of saying we wanted it badly enough to pretend. Karen sold 14 lots in my inherited canyon. County records canceled every sale, and the lesson is simple enough to fit on a gate sign. Before anyone sells land, ask who owns it. Before anyone buys land, check the county recorder. And before any HOA claims future rights, demand the recorded instrument, not a concept map, not a sales packet, not a community vision, not a promise from a president in a white blazer standing beside orange flags, but a recorded deed, a legal plat, a real approval, because everything else is dust in the wind. If this story kept you listening, tell me in the comments what you think was worse. Karen selling land she knew the HOA did not own, or the board taking deposits before title was even real. Share this with someone who lives near undeveloped land, owns inherited property, or has ever heard an HOA call someone else's land a future amenity. And subscribe for more stories, where ordinary landowners do not win by shouting louder, but by keeping the records that prove exactly where the fantasy ends and ownership begins.